Sup, nerds? I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Aaron.
We're taking a look at Whistle Stop. Woo woo!
By Bezier Games.
Whistle Stop is one more train game to add to your collection.
And as you'd expect from a train game, you are building a track in which you're trying to move across, from one side to the other and possibly, pick up things and
Deliver
things.
The tile placement, pick up and deliver game with trains.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much it.
So it kind of melds a lot of other things that you've gotten from other train games, because that's really the only thing you can do with a train is carry things from one place to the other. So
There are way more things you could do with trains.
Well,
you could travel through time,
You can launch them up and they go into buildings.
throw rocks at them.
Is there
flatten pennies and
Flatten
quarters.
pennies.
The interesting thing about the tile laying and the actual collection of all of the resources is, on your turn, if you want to move to a space where there is nothing, you just place one of the tiles from your hand, and then as you're collecting the resources, they're actually cumulative between all of your trains, which doesn't really make sense, but it does. It's like, okay, this company has all of these resources,
Sure. Yeah, thematically, there are some holes. You're not just oh my god, there's just nothingness. Oh, somebody put some track down. Thank God. I do think it is cool that you have the board kind of empty, and you're filling in the space on the board. You have the beginning row is there, the end. Well, we didn't do it fully here. The beginning row is there, the end row is there, and then there's the middle row, which kind of leads to my very first complaint, is that setup for this game does take a little while because the end tiles have a different back, so those are easy. But the middle row, I always have to refer to the rule book because, we definitely didn't do it right here, but it's you need to have one trading post, one coal factory, 2 of these, 3 of these. It's a little bit clunky, and I know why they do it. You want to have, by the time you get to the middle, you want there to be an ability for you to get more coal or for you to start making trades, or by that point in the game, these tiles really ought to have come out, but it's just annoying during setup.
I've never set the game up, so it really doesn't bother me at all.
He just comes over and trashes the house and leaves.
And then the rest of the special tiles get mixed into the main deck, so you can actually get them and have them right at the beginning of the, where you can just, right off the bat, if you can collect some resources with other trains, just start trading them in, getting victory points and getting those stocks, which are really valuable.
Mm-hmm. The stocks are almost a little too valuable. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's an all or nothing, and they are kind of abundant because there are 5 different stock companies, and I think there's at least 2 or so tiles for the stock companies, so it feels kind of abundant, but the fact that it is all or nothing does
15 points if you have the most, 0 points per second.
And you can mitigate it also by selling the stocks. If you get to this tile at the end here, the stock market tile, I would maybe want to try a version where house ruling that to where second place, even if second place was lower, 5 points, it would still be you get something,
I mean, you are getting points for getting the stock while you're getting the stock, but it does feel really this I've worked so hard for this, but we ended up tying, and since you got the first stock in that type, you win the tie, you get the 15 points.
It does make for some really nasty cutthroat fights, though, trying to get it. I can see you going for it. What can I do to get that first? Can I? It does kind of suck if you lose it while you're both vying to get those points. It gets really nasty, and I kind of like it when games get nasty, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that does add, because besides that, I'm not going to lie, I don't care for train games. It's one of those themes that, because I've played so many train games, I just don't care about that. If another game comes out with trains, I'm like, great, more trains. And that cutthroatiness is one of those things that I feel I guess a lot of train games have cutthroaty, cutting people off kind of thing. But that vying for stocks is really interesting. And I do think the stock market does kind of help mitigate that, where if you just go for a bunch of different stocks, one, it's a great way to get points as you're going across the board, but then you can just hit that multiple times, and so okay, hit it once, maybe that's a great deal. But if you can hit it 2 or 3 times, then those stocks really do start paying off, even if you maybe didn't get the 15 points for getting the most of them.
I ended up doing that in one game where I just I had a bunch of stocks, but I wasn't winning, so I would went to the stock market, got 4 points for all my stocks, sold one, and then try to do it again later round. But there was a point where there's this cutthroat you're talking about with these abilities that you can buy,
Mhm.
and you had bought an ability that if I left a space where you were, I had to pay you a resource cube, and that was such a like game changer. It just changed my strategy. I'm like, well, that train has to stay there now because I have no resources, or I have to go collect an extra resource so I can get this guy out of that spot because that's a train that I had set up to do something. And like it definitely, having these different abilities in play can kind of really change the way your strategy goes, or just force other people to have different strategies.
That really was like just a perfect storm of where those cars were. So we were all on a coal mine, so get to coal, that was right adjacent to a blue, like the valuable resource, the rare resource. So every turn we'd like, well, I'm going to spend 2 coal to get 2 coal and a blue cube. Like that's a no-brainer, right? And so by me sitting on that, not only did it lock your 2 trains in there because you weren't willing to give me a resource, but on my turn, I could still do that every time and come back there and still lock you guys out. So that was part of why I actually did enjoy that last game, was just because I think I did that in multiple places. At you first and then to you, where I'm like, well, I'm just going to leave these trains here, and you guys are welcome to give me a resource and leave, because there wasn't anything holding me there. If I needed that train, I could use it, but there was something holding them there.
Yeah, these tiles can be pretty big game changers, like you said. Even the ones that just give you, like you spend a coal to get something else, spend a coal to get a whistle, spend a coal to get a gold, like it changes the way you're going to think. So don't disregard them at the very beginning. You may think like, well, I don't want to spend those resources on this. And that is another thing to note. It's really important to get as many resources as you can. Playing efficiently, which is what I was doing in our last game, while it worked at first, I was able to bum rush forward and get one of these stocks first. Ooh, I had this number 1, and I dumped these, I dumped the resources, I got the 7 points, and now I have the number 1, boom. But always having exactly the amount that you need is kind of bad, because you can't, fight things like that. It wasn't even so much like, I didn't want to give him a resource to leave. It's, I can't. That would mess with my turn. I'm going to have to ignore this train, come over here and use this train, because it can get a gray, then I'll have a gray and a white, and I can do this. But, like, running that tight is not a good idea because of how cutthroat the game can be.
And with those ability gears, I guess we'll call them, the other big thing it can do is just there's points on them. It's a great way to sell off especially the ones that take common resources, just sell off 2 common resources, so 2 points to potentially get 5 points. That's part of how I won the last game we played. I did win, right?
Yeah.
By like 2 points.
Yeah, but I won by 2 points, but that's because I bought a 5-point gear in my last turn. So if I hadn't done that, like that's what swung the game for me.
It was also like Aaron was for a long time. Aaron was like half a board ahead of both of us. I was like, well, the game's over. Aaron won, but then
in that last turn, not only did I buy that thing, but I scored 2 trains into the 25 bonus slot that just half the board caught up.
50 points right there. Yeah, there is a lot to be said about playing the long game here. Yeah, if you're trying to bum rush to do something real early, you might screw yourself over. So the only other negative that I have with that, given that knowledge, is that you need to know the game a bit. A person who's played before, if knowing those facts will have an edge up, or at least you need to tell people when they sit down, hey, make sure you get a lot of resources. Don't try and end the game early. It probably won't work out for you. Unless you've seen that work out, but I kind of doubt it.
I do want to say, from my experience of playing this game, I do feel like they did a pretty good job of balancing like the end game scoring and kind of that first to rush to the end kind of thing. There's like a little perk to doing that. Like all these points, like trading in, a bunch of rare resources worth 25 points, but trading in a bunch of common resources is 10, which kind of goes with like, okay, if you save those 3 rare resources, you're getting 15, and if you save the 3 common ones, so like it kind of multiplies the same amount, so that seems pretty balanced. I do think that being the first one to finish, getting those 2 whistles is really powerful. So like if you can pull off a quick dump and like get to the end and like get some points real quick, and getting those bonus whistles and getting 1 resource of your choice, like that can be really powerful, because now you can pull off other movements on the board that other people can't, because whistles are very rare. Like it's called whistle stop, but they're really hard to come by.
That's true. Well, I mean, unless, of course, though you draw a whistle factor, it happens to be in the middle. And you're right, doing that for that first train, bum rushing to the end for your first train is good, and then spending the rest of your trains take time with them to try and gather up more resources. You're right, and it may sound like I'm harking on this game. I'm just pulling out the negatives as I'm coming up with them. But like Wesley said, we said, oh well, generally I don't like train games. Well, generally I don't really like tile placement games. It's probably just like one of my least favorite. I guess they've been growing on me. I've been playing a lot more of them recently. But this is probably the way that I like tile placement to be done. If the game is strictly tile placement and that's all you're doing, that's like 90% of the mechanics, like just Carcassonne, right? I'm always like kind of like, eh. But if it's in there with other stuff, and here it has to do with it's tile placement, but it's also pick up and deliver, it feels, it's just better for me. I enjoy it more.
It's kind of like map building too. Like whatever you place, I can also use, and what I place, you can use. So it's not like in like other tile placement games where I'm like, I'm going to place this and score points, and then it has no other effect on the game.
Yeah, it's not like I'm just building my little thing and I'm playing a solo game. Yeah, the fact that I put it here, I could be blocking you or I could be helping you out unnecessarily without thinking about it. So I was ready to not like this game, and I will, admit there were some negatives. I already said a lot of them. Probably one other one is the coloring. It's kind of pastel for a lot of but that's about it. Like, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. It's pretty dang good.
I'm gonna have to agree. I really do think this is a really good game. Like, there's a lot of interesting choices that you have to make and where you place your tiles, because you start with multiple trains at the very start, so you can kind of start from wherever. You could be like, okay, I want to build up down at the bottom this one resource that I have in my hand. I want to be able to collect it down there. Or you could do it at the top, like depending on where you have your trains placed. Like, I know there's a lot of strategy, and like, do I put two trains next to each other so that I can get them to both pick up this resource, or do I try and get all my trains to converge so they can just like hop on each other and just like kind of like leapfrog, because that's really crazy. If you have a train, your own train in front of you, you can just skip past a stop, and like that, especially late game, to get to the end real quick, like you just like leapfrog at the end, be like, okay, I'm gonna deliver, and then I'm gonna take another action and leapfrog with this other guy that's now at the back and deliver as well. Those little like strategic things that you have to think about are really fun in this game.
So as much as I really don't care for train games, I really didn't mind this that much. I'm not going to be the one to grab it off the shelf, but I'm definitely not going to shy away from playing it again. My first time playing it was a little bit rough. I think I just wasn't into it. The second time, I really said, okay, I really need to give it my all, really just put aside any preconceived notions I have and just play the game. And I had a really good time playing it.
What do you like? Did you like this better or worse than Railways of the World?
I probably like this one better just because it was faster.
I actually probably still think I like Railways better.
Okay. And I think that that's a good game.
Aaron?
Sorry.
Railways and this are very comparable. I will probably say
comparable.
I think it's comparable.
You can compare them.
You could compare them in a comparable manner, yeah.
They're very similar. You're placing tiles to make your tracks, and I think I like this better because I didn't feel like I was in the hole. I don't know. That one's definitely a more
more economical.
A more economical. Like, if I'm looking for an economy, like trading, like the stocks in this don't transfer as well as like the economics in Railways.
That's true.
I think the tile placement in this one works way better than Railways. Like Railways, it's just like I'm making a straight track, but it takes me all these resources to build it. This is like, I have the track, I'm building it, it gets me resources. So it's a little different. This is more of a family weight train game, but I think if you like train games, you should just get both.
I think this is a little cleaner than Railways too.
Really? Oh, because of the random way that there could be a lot of purples right here.
Yeah. And honestly, I think Aaron hit it on the head with the stocks. And we're not reviewing.
We have a review for Railway.
Yeah, but we're not reviewing that in this game. But the fact that I got to a point that I was just in a hole and I couldn't dig out of it, and just every turn the game lasted, I was just getting farther and farther behind. And there was zero light at the end of the tunnel.
Just like in real life sometimes.
But again, it's not my favorite game, but it's one of my favorite train games, and I think I had a good time playing it.
Well, if any of that sounds interesting to you, or I guess if you tend to agree with me and Aaron a little bit more than you tend to agree with Wes, I don't know, we're going to have a purchase link to this game in the description box down below, as well as the expansion whenever that's available.
Either way, you should subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored. All aboard! The Never Bored train!
All never bored!
either way, you should subscribe. Sorry, I need a glass of water. Just finish the
No
video.
water. No water, Harold. What is up, nerds? I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
And I am Aaron.
Woo woo.
All aboard!